Welcome to today's Meet the Funder session, where you'll learn more about the Cost of Living Fund and the Winter Warmth Packs Fund. Emma will be delivering the session from Actions Together. Over to you, Emma.
Thank you, Hayley. So I will just share my screen so you can see our presentation today. Just get that onto the slideshow. And can I just confirm people can see the slides now? Yep. Okay, brilliant. So good morning, everyone. My name's Emma Ansell-Meehan and I am Rochdale Director here at Action Together, and thanks for joining today's Meet the Funder session. So today we're going to be focusing on two funding opportunities for voluntary community organisations in Rochdale Borough. The first of those is our Cost of Living Response Small Grants Programme, and the second is our Winter Warmer Packs Programme. So I'll be going through each of those in turn. And as Hayley said, if you do have any questions, please pop them in the chat as we're going through, and we will have some time for questions and discussion at the end. So before I talk about the fund itself, just wanted to remind everyone about the principles of the way in which we work as an infrastructure organisation to support our members with funding. So we are signed up as part of the Open and Trusted Grant Making Programme, which is a programme that talks about best practice in terms of grant making for voluntary sector infrastructure organisations. So our principles are there on the screen. We ensure that we don't waste time. So we aim to have a clear outlined timing process for our grants. We make sure that we ask relevant questions. So in terms of our application forms, we work really hard to make sure that we're only asking questions that we really need to ask, not asking for excessive information. We act with urgency, which is particularly important in the case of this Cost of Living Grants Programme, because we know that our communities need that urgent support as soon as possible. In terms of our communication, we aim to communicate with purpose and communicate open and transparently. We also work to enable flexibility. So we do recognise that, particularly when we're talking about emerging needs or fast moving issues like the cost of living crisis, that the needs of communities and also the work of your groups and organisations is constantly changing. So we do aim to be as flexible as possible with our funding programmes, and we also aim to be proportionate. So making sure that for small grants programmes, we're asking for only the amount of information that is relevant and needed for us to be able to make decisions on grant applications. And there is just a link there if anyone does want to find out more about the Open and Trusted Grant Making Programme. So I'll start talking through the first of our two programmes that we're here to discuss today. And the first is our Cost of Living Response Grants Programme. So the background to this, just need to make my screen a little bit smaller. There we go. So the background to this is that we've received some investment from the Public Health Department of Rochdale Borough Council to support the VCSE sector, to support individuals, families and communities in our borough who are currently experiencing hardship as a result of cost of living increases and the cost of living crisis. The way that this has been developed is that Action Together and a few other voluntary sector partners are members of a cross-partnership anti-poverty steering group that's been established in the borough. And what we've been aiming to do through that group is pull together existing resources and information and ensure that there's a targeted support plan to our households who will need support, particularly over the winter months. And as part of this work, a plan has been put in place to advise and support households across two key themes. The first of those is around warmth and shelter, so supporting people to stay safe and well in their homes, ensuring people can access support around energy and fuel costs if they need to, and access to products and resources that enable people to stay safe at home, because we do know that living in cold, damp and unsuitable housing does have a real impact on people's health and well-being. We know that, for older people, living in cold, unsuitable homes leads to a higher risk of stroke and heart disease, and a higher risk of hospital admission. And for younger people as well, there can be a real risk in terms of respiratory disease, and a knock-on impact on young people's health and well-being. The second theme is around money maximisation. So ensuring that communities across the borough understand what they're entitled to in terms of financial support, and also giving lots of general support around family budgeting and money maximisation, so ensuring people are making the most of the money that they have access to, and making sure that people have access to additional advice, particularly welfare advice, and can access other elements of funding like the Rochdale Borough Household Support Fund, which is again active this winter. There is a lot of information on Rochdale Borough Council's website around the overall cost of living response programme. So what I'll do is I'll make sure that link goes into the chat as well, so you can see what that broad package of cost of living support from the council and the partnership looks like. So in terms of our cost of living support grants, there are 3 priorities for this funding. The first being projects that directly support residents with the cost of living crisis. So this might include emergency one-off provision for people in crisis, or longer term projects to reduce inequality and build resilience across our borough's communities. So this may be the purchase of one-off products or equipment to support people, or it may be longer term work to bring people together to particularly target groups who are marginalised, who are more likely to experience health inequalities, and support people to become resilient over time. The second priority is working with our residents to improve health and well-being, which includes new or ongoing mental health and well-being projects, and projects to prevent illness and premature death. So this really speaks to some of what I was just talking about. So we know that debt and financial issues do have a direct link to poorer mental health, higher rates of depression, anxiety and stress in our communities. So we are looking to invest in projects which support people's mental health, well-being and resilience over the winter months, as well as projects which work with particular communities to prevent illness and premature death. So work that is going on to keep people safe and well in their homes, and reducing that risk of hospital admission, which we know does create that additional burden on our already stretched health and social care services. And then the third priority is really about safeguarding and supporting our most at-risk residents and specific groups experiencing health inequalities. So this may be projects targeted at specific communities, such as communities experiencing racial discrimination and marginalisation, disabled communities, older people, LGBT communities. So looking at working with groups who we know experience particular health inequalities, and ensuring that there is support in place for them. So these priorities are relatively broad, because we really want to support a diverse range of projects across the borough. And those of you who are familiar with our previous small grants programme, the Respond, Repair, Recover programme, will know that we are looking to support a broad and diverse range of projects. So we're really keen to hear about your ideas, and also projects which you've devised as a result of insight that you've gathered directly from your communities about how the cost of living crisis is impacting people, and putting in place support which aims to address that. So just a bit of key information about this grants programme. Within the cost of living response grants, we can fund projects of up to £2,500. In terms of who can apply, this fund is available to groups who are members of Action Together, people who are locally rooted and active in the borough, and you must either be formally constituted, or you can evidence that you're working towards this. So for example, newer or smaller groups that are working towards a formal registration as a charity, C or CIC or other legal structure, but you may be working with one of our development team along that journey. In terms of the project length, this grant programme is very much focused around the winter months, and putting in place that additional support that we know people are likely to need over the challenging winter months. So our end project, we would ask that projects are completed by the end of May this year, but do anticipate that the majority of the delivery is over those sort of key winter months up to the end of March, but recognizing that some projects will kind of go slightly beyond that. So that's why we've put the end of May 23 for the final delivery of those projects. The decision-making process is via our community grants panel. So this is a panel made up of volunteers from within our borough's communities, our partner organisations such as Rochdale Borough Council, and representatives from the voluntary and community sector. So those of you who have applied to previous funds will know that your application will go in, it will be reviewed by our community panel, and we'll come back to you with either a clear approval. We may come back to you asking for some additional information or you know, some tweaks to the project that you've proposed, or it may be that actually the project that's been proposed isn't in line with those funding priorities. But as I said, we do really aim to work with people. So, you know, we may come back to you asking for additional information or to ensure your project is more closely aligned with one of those 3 priorities that I just talked about. And in terms of the deadline, this is a rolling grant, so we will be issuing, we will be shortlisting and giving results on funding applications as soon as they come in. So as soon as your project comes in, it will go into our community grants panel and come back to you with a decision within 6 weeks. That's the timeline that we set for our grants programs. But we do recommend applying as soon as possible. We do expect this fund to be quite popular, because you know, as you can see, there are quite a number of us on the call today, and we've had a number of additional inquiries, plus the fact that we do anticipate the majority of these projects being delivered over the winter months. So, you know, we recommend getting an application into this grant programme as soon as you're able to. So what can the money be spent on? So through this programme, we can fund you to purchase equipment, any project resources that you might need, and running costs for you as an organisation. We are able to fund staff time and staff and volunteer expenses, but we do ask that those costs are clearly set out, and where possible, you identify the relevant staff and volunteers in advance that will actually be delivering the project. One question that we've had when we took our draft guidance notes to our economic support network was around whether this fund could include discretionary funds directly aimed at residents. So I did want to make sure we were really clear in this, that we are able to fund discretionary funds aimed at residents. So for example, you purchasing one-off items for residents directly, but we do ask that the costs that you anticipate spending on that discretionary fund and clear eligibility criteria are detailed in your application. So for example, you may want to include the provision to you know, purchase electrical items or make one-off direct payments to residents, but we would need to see what the costs involved were, the breakdown of those costs, and how you intended to use a discretionary fund with residents. So just at the bottom there, you know, if there's a sort of lump sum that just says, you know, £2,000 on a discretionary fund but lacks that detail, we wouldn't be able to fund that. We will be asking you to share how you will be using a discretionary fund to directly support residents and how many residents you'd be anticipating supporting through that discretionary fund as well. So that is the cost of living response grant. I'll just work through the winter warmer PACS grants, and then I expect there will be some questions and discussions. We'll come on to that after this. So the second grant is our winter warmer PACS grant. So what is a winter warmer pack? These are packs which consist of household items, ambient food and clothing to be distributed to people across the Rochdale Borough. So really, we will be looking to you for your expertise on the communities that you serve and what they need to stay safer and warmer this winter. So here are some examples of groups that you may be supporting through the Winter Warmer Packs programme. So you may want to produce some winter warmer packs that are targeted at specific age groups. So for example, packs which contains products for children or babies or older people. We're also definitely looking to fund packs which contain culturally appropriate items for specific communities. We want to support packs which encourage self-care and well-being for communities, so linking back to that mental health and well-being aspect, and you know, packs which help people increase their well-being over the winter months and promote self-care. We also encourage educational items to be used in packs. So again, those might be aimed at children, but can be aimed absolutely at all age groups. There may be products which help to keep families warm in their homes. So I'll give some examples of what that might look like on the next slide. And you may be producing packs which are aimed at specific communities of identity, for example, disabled people, LGBT communities, and racially minoritized communities as well. So items in packs. Now, this is by no means an exhaustive list, but we wanted to provide some examples of what might go into a winter warmer package that you produce and distribute to communities. So an example might be a baby pack. So that might contain, for example, baby sleeping bags or appropriate warm clothing for babies. You might want to produce packs for children. So actually products that are appropriate for children, such as children's duvets and duvet covers and warm clothing for children and young people. You may also want to purchase and distribute specific items that help people to stay warm. So socks, gloves, scarves, hats, items which we know sort of help to keep an individual warm. You may want to focus on hot food and drinks, so thermal mugs, which allow people to you know, have their hot drinks, have their teas, coffees and soups, and those are going to stay warm for a long time. And it may be that you want to kind of purchase kettles or other items too. Warm at home packs, so things like hot water bottles, hand warmers, blankets, hoodies and blanket hoodies, which are really popular this winter as well. So items which support people to stay warm in their own homes. Family packs, so items that families might need as well. And things like sanitary product packs, such as tampons and sanitary towels, because those are expensive products that are not necessarily freely available to everyone at the moment. As I said, this is not an exhaustive list, and we really want your ideas and your thoughts about what the communities you work with will need and what products will support people over the winter months. But this hopefully will give you some ideas and some inspiration about the types of packs that you might want to make up and distribute. And we can, of course, you may need to purchase, you know, packaging such as boxes or bags for those items, and that can absolutely be included in your application to this grant. Okay, so just a bit of key information about this grant. So the Winter Warmer Packs grants are up to £500 per organisation. There's the same criteria there in terms of groups of being a member of Action Together, locally rooted and active in the borough, and either formally constituted or working towards this. Again, with the project length, we would anticipate you know, all funds being spent and all projects finalised by June 23, but with primary delivery of the winter packs over the cold winter months. The decision-making process will be undertaken by Action Together staff, as this is a much smaller grants programme. We want to be able to make decisions very quickly and get that funding out to you all as soon as possible. So there's slightly different decision-making process for this grant. And the deadline for final applications is the 31st of January. But like with the previous fund, we will accept applications on a rolling basis. So if all of our funding is allocated, it may close earlier than the 31st of January. So again, just encourage you to get in those applications as soon as you're able to. in terms of what the money can and can't be spent on, so we've talked quite a lot, I've just talked quite a lot about what it can be spent on, but just a few notes on items that it can't be spent on. So fireworks and sparklers, candles, matches, lighters, fire lighters, and lighter fuel, just because you know, those are potentially hazardous items, alcohol and medicine. And then in terms of product safety, we do recognise that, you know, you might, for example, want to purchase items aimed at children and young people, or small electrical items for families as well, such as slow cookers, kettles, those kinds of items. So we really just want to, you know, highlight that it is the responsibility of applicants to ensure the products that you're purchasing for winter warmer packs are compliant with all relevant legislation, and that the products that you're purchasing are purchased from reputable retailers. So where possible, we do ask that you indicate where you'll be purchasing those products from in your application. And if you are successful, we will be asking you to submit your organisation health and safety policy, just because, you know, there is potential for there to be some risks and hazards associated with some items. And so we really just want to make sure that all products are health and safety compliant, and that we really minimise the risks around the winter packs and the products within them. And again, if you're unsure about this, there's lots of kind of additional support around compliance, and you know, children's items that we can share with you. So again, if there's anything that you're not sure about, or you're not sure how to make sure that something is compliant with relevant legislation, do get in touch and we can direct you to lots of relevant information and advice around these. So in terms of successful applications to both of these funds, so once you've submitted your application and your application has either gone to our community grants panel or the relevant Action Together staff team members, we will get back in touch with you to confirm success, and we'll also link you into any relevant networks if you're not already a member of one. So we've got a really active collection of borough-wide thematic networks, including our Food Solutions Network, Economic Support Network, Emotional Health and Wellbeing Network, Women's Network, LGBT Network, and Refugee and Asylum Seeker Network. So if we feel like it would support you to join and be a part of one of those networks, we will highlight those to you when we get back in touch with you regarding your application. You'll then receive a grant agreement, and that will just contain some terms and conditions which you'll need to read and agree to, and then you'll sign that. You'll send back any relevant policies, such as the health and safety policy that I mentioned, and then we will issue payment to you. Thirdly, if something changes during your project, all we ask is that you contact us. You know, we absolutely recognise that things do change. Sometimes delivery changes, or you may have staff changes. So if there are delays or any changes that you want to make to your project, we just ask that you get in touch with us to discuss those during the delivery part of your project, so that we can discuss those and help help come to an agreement that's going to work for everyone. And then fourth, monitoring. So we will issue some light monitoring paperwork to you towards the end of your delivery, and that is so that we can understand how funding's been used and what positive impact it's made. And that's also really helpful for us in terms of our work with our public sector partners, and really being able to show the positive impact of these grants programs, so that we can continue to make the case for additional grant funding, grants programs to come to be available to our community and voluntary sector. So just to finish off, in terms of top tips for applying for these two grants. So first of all, read the guidance notes. So both of these grants programs have a set of guidance notes, which is available on our website. When you go to apply, there's some guidance notes which you can download and read through, and hopefully those should answer any key questions that you have about the programs, what can and can't be funded, what the funding priorities are, and that sort of thing. In terms of the application form itself, just make sure that you're really reading the questions and answering what's being asked there. because our community grants panel won't necessarily be familiar with you as a group or organisation. So making sure that you put all of the relevant information into those question headers is really important. And, you know, even if you've worked with us before, you know, it's really helpful to just include a little bit of background about your group and your organisation and the work that you do in the community, because that's really helpful for our community grants panel, who won't necessarily be familiar with the work of every single group. We do ask that you make your budget as clear as possible. So, for example, you know, if you're saying, you know, with this budget, we're going to be purchasing you know, 3 laptops, say we're going to be purchasing 3 laptops at, you know, £347 each from Currys, just so we've got that, you know, understanding that you've thought through your budget and you've got a really clear plan for how that funding is going to be spent. And finally, if you're not sure, ask. So Hayley, who introduced today's call, is available to answer any questions. So yeah, if you're not sure about anything before you submit your application, do get in touch and we can give you that information and advice and guidance that you'll need prior to submitting your application. So I will pause there, stop sharing my screen, and we can open up for some questions and discussion.